Welcome all of you to today's class. Today we will discuss about the return under GST. I, Vikas Kumar Naik, the lecturer of Commerce, Department of Commerce and Management Studies, Kendrapada Autonomous College. Welcome all of you to the today's online classes on return under GST. So, my dear student, as you know, the return under GST have different approaches under GST era. As the GST has been introduced, the era of electronics has also been introduced. All the physical activities or facilities have been removed and everything has done through the electronically. The most important part of a tax system is return file of your tax amount. And under GST, there are several processes are there are several dates are there, several activities are there you have to perform, a registered person has to perform in order to file the return. So today we will discuss the details, the how a registered person file the return under GST. The return specifically, simply we mean that specifically furnishing the detailed information of taxpayer to the government. Suppose Mr. Mukesh Ambani is paying tax under GST, he has to furnish some detailed information to the governments in order to determine the tax liability of Mr. Mukesh Ambani. So it is a statutory format, that means it has a prefixed format. You can't make as per your own. There is fixed format. You have to file return as per that format. And one most important thing is the return must be correct and must be timely. This is the most important thing is under GST. The whatever return filed by the taxpayer, it must be correct. It must not be exceed amount. It must not be less amount. It must be actual. What actual amount of tax has to pay, that must be shown in return file, and it must be timely, because in tax system one thing is very important. The tax return must be filed on due time, that is called timely. So that remember, the return under GST must be timely and must be correct amount. And another thing we can say, it is just a return system under GST act as a control over what much of amount a registered person has paid in term of tax and what much of amount a registered person has availed in term of ITC. This is really a really very important information we get from the return, that a registered person how much get in term of the ITC and how much is paid in term of tax. So this is all about the basics of return under GST. So now let us move to what are the benefits of filing returns. If you are a registered person filing return, what he actually receives the benefit? So firstly, it facilitates the time transfer of information, because if you file your return on time, then that also facilitates the timely exchange of information or timely transfer of information to the governments. And next one is, it's most important, you have to compliances. A taxpayer or a registered person has to compliances the status. What is his status regarding the tax payment? He has to comply with the governments, and this is one another benefit, and which can be easily done through return. And another is, filing of return also help in determining the tax liability. What amount of tax a registered person has to pay, that can be determined if you are going to file your return. And another things, which is another important things, that is help in policy formulation to government. When government is going to formulate any policies regarding the taxation system, so definitely you will look at the database of the return filings. So this is the sum of the benefits a taxpayer has to reap out of the return file. Then if you look at the GST, what are the return mechanism in GST? That means how a taxpayer, how a registered person under GST pays the tax. So dear student, if you look at, you find all the returns must be filed electronically. Already I have told, this is the era of electronics. You have to file your return by yourself electronically or by other, that is called GST Subhidha Parivar. Government has approved some other third party. Those are facilitates to file the return. That is called GST Suvidha Parivar. Like a chartered accountant has opened a chambers or consultancy, he helps the other registered persons to file their return. That is called GST Suvidha Parivar. Suppose I have a government serve, but I doesn't have any knowledge on GST return filing. So that I appointed Mr. X as a tax consultant to file my returns. So Mr. X is a GST Suvidha Parivar. That means if a registered person has to file the tax electronically by directly through GST portal or directly through the GST Suvidha Parivar. So that government has all the access. If you can upload it everything, when a taxpayer upload everything in GST portal, the government has access to all the documents what they uploaded by the registered persons. And another thing is it is a auto-populated informations in return. Whatever you file the return, that will automatically transferred to every stakeholders of GST. Another things, that information must be matching to the transaction you have shown. Whatever transaction you have shown as a business person, that must be matched. And rectification window also there. A registered supplier or a recipient can rectify the information if he has entered any wrong information. Another thing, whenever a recipient file the returns, he has to validate whether the data is correct or not correct. So this is some of the return mechanisms. So that if you summarize it into the one line, you can say that the under GST era, the return has been made through electronically, directly through GST portal or through GST Suvidha Parivar. So then question arises, what are the modes through which a registered person can file the return? So what are the ways through which, by using which, a registered person file the returns? So there are three modes available to file the returns under GST. We can say the return through GST portal, offline utilities, or through GST Suvidha Parivar. That means if a registered person has to file the return under GST, he has three modes to file the return. First mode is you can directly file the return through GST portal, that is gst.gov.in, or you can throw offline utility facilities are provided by GST network, or through whatever I have already told in just few minutes back, you can file the return through GST Suvidha providers, which is termed as GST Suvidha Parivar or GSP. So these are the modes available for a registered taxpayers to file the returns. So now question arises, is the return filed under GST are same for all the taxpayers? Because there are various types of taxpayers in GST, and for the various types of taxpayers, the various types of returns are also there. In GST, there are around 20 types of GST returns are there. 22, remember, 22 types of GST returns are there, but out of them, only 11 types of GST returns are active and 3 have suspended and 8 are view only. Remember, my dear student, out of 22 types of return, only active return, number of active return is 11. 3, we can say the 3 return has already suspended by the GST Council, and another 8 are only view only, that cannot be used, only you can see, that cannot be used. So that today we'll learn only the 11 GST return which are actively so today we'll learn the 11 types of GST return where actively they are in GST portals. So let us discuss what are the 11 types of GST returns available under GST. The first one is, I can summarize into the tables. First is return number, file number, form number, the description, then what are the due dates to filing the return. The first return form number is GST year 1. Remember, GST year 1, that means GST year 1, who is going to file the GST year 1? Those supplier are making outward supplies of goods and services. If you are making outward supply of goods and services and you are going to file the return, then you have to file the return in GST year 1. And your due date is, remember, your due date is 13th quarter. 2 due date is there. Earlier it was monthly, but now it is going to 30th of the quarter. Because you have to file the return every quarter, that is 30th of the next quarter. When a supplier making supply of outward supply, he has to file GST return in GST year 1 in the 13th of the next quarter. Next go to GST year 2. Then if any suppliers making any inward supplies, then here of goods and services, and then if he going to make the make the return, then he has to file the return in GSTR 2, and the due date for the return is 15th of the next month, and the filing of return is monthly here. And next you come to GSTR 3, and GSTR 3 is basically for normal taxpayers, but it is suspended now, it is not active, so that we need not to learn more. Then GSTR 3B has been added. So GSTR 3B has been returned for all regular taxpayers, and it is monthly. That is, monthly means you have to pay monthly, you have to file monthly return, that is 20th of the next month. Or now it is has been also amended, that is 22nd of the following quarters. Then GSTR 4. Who will use the GSTR 4? Now those are the registered under composition scheme. They have to file their return in GSTR 4. Remember, this is very important. And all the composition scheme taxpayers has to file tax annually, and the due date is 30th April of the next financial year. And next, if you come to GSTR 5, the GSTR 5 is basically used by the non-resident taxpayer, which is termed as NRTP. Those are NRTP. If they are going to file the return, they has to file the return in GSTR 5, and the due date for return is 20th of the next month, and that is monthly return. That means you have every month you have to file return before the 20th of the next month. Then come GSTR 5B. The GSTR 5B is basically for OIDR services. OI means online information data access retrieval services. Those are providing basically data online data services basically for them. If they are going to file the return, they have to file the return in GSTR 5B, and the due date of return is same as the above, 20th of the next month, and that has to be paid monthly. Then come to GSTR 6. GSTR 6 specifically used by the input service distributors. Those are only providing input services. That input service service distributor has to file return in GSTR 6, and the due date for file the return is 30th of the next month, and that has the that means every month they has to file the return before the 30th of the next month. Then GSTR 7. GSTR 7 specifically for the authorities who have been deducting TDS. That means only government has to pay when government has to file the return, or any agencies of the government has to file the return, they has to file the return in GSTR 7, and the due date for the file the return for the, those authorities deducting TDS is 10th of the next month. Then if you come to GSTR 8, then it is for e-commerce operator. As you know, e-commerce operator in some cases has to pay tax, so that he has to file the return. So if an e-commerce operator is going to file the return, he has to file in GSTR 8, and the due date is 10th of the next month. And next come, there is most important part, because every at the end of the every financial year, a registered person has to pay tax. That is called annual return. And remember, a student, the annual return has to pay in form number GSTR 9, and the due date is 31st December of the next financial year. Remember, suppose the financial year now is 2023. Then whenever a taxpayer is going to file the return for the financial year 2023, the due date is 31st December of 2023, because this is start from 1st April to 31st March 2023. This is the year. For the year 2023, the return under GST, when we are going to file the annual return, the due date is 31st December 2023, and that has to be filed in GSTR 9. Then another addition to GSTR 9 is GSTR 9A. The GSTR 9A already suspended, so we don't need to learn more. The next is GSTR 9C, which has been newly added. The GSTR 9C basically for the reconciliation statement whose turnover exceeding 2 crore. Remember, it is basically a conditional item whose taxpayer, whose regular the taxpayer whose turnover exceeds the 2 crores, whenever is going to submit the reconciliation statement, that means changing statement, because last year that means the last year the turnover may not exceed 2 crore, but this time the turnover exceeds the 2 crore, so that he has to again file the reconciliation statement that this year my turnover has been exceeded 2 crores, so that one more GSTR form has to be added in order to file the return, that is GSTR 9C, and the due date is 31st December of the next financial year. This is called this is GST and INC. And next one is very very important. Many of you maybe have any doubt. The annual return and final return. So remember, annual return has to be filed every year annually, for every once in every year. But final return means when your business going to close down, to whatever transaction have been, whether it may be 31st December, 31st October, whatever may be the date. When a business going to close down, he has to file the return at the final, because after that the business is no more. So that this is called final return. The final return has to file in GSTR 10, and the due date is that is one time, because a business has to file final return one time whenever is going to shut down. That is within 3 months of the date of cancellation or the date of order of cancellation. When the order of cancellation has been issued by GST commissioners, because those registration has been cancelled, they have to pay tax for the final time. This is called final return. Final return means when a taxpayer has to pay tax when his registration has been cancelled. This is called final return, and final return has to be filed in GSTR 10, and the due date is within 3 months from the date of cancellation or date of order of cancellation, whichever is earlier. This is called final return. Now come to GSTR 11. So GSTR 11 for basically the person having unique identification number and making supplies of inward. In such cases, they has to file the return in GSTR 11, and their due date is 20th of the next month. So remember, these are the forms of GST return forms available, and these are the person, or these are the registered person who are eligible to file the return under the different forms and their due date, respective due dates. So now question arises, who is the regular taxpayer under GST? So remember, every registered person is a regular taxpayer under GST. Those are registered under GST, they are treated as regular person. In addition to them, others are there who can be said as regular taxpayer. They can be supplier of OIDR service. OIDR service means online information data access retrieval. Mean those organization or business agency has been engaged in online database, that is called in GST the name is OIDR. Those agencies are providing OIDR services. They are also regular taxpayer. Those are registered as composition taxpayer. They are also treated as regular taxpayer. Sorry, I have some mistake. That means every registered person is a regular taxpayer except the following. Means they cannot be treated as a regular taxpayer. Excluding them, everybody are regular taxpayer. So who are not come under regular taxpayer? Supplier of OIDR services, composition scheme, and a non-resident taxable person, input service distributor, e-commerce operator, a person, those are deducting tax. They are not part of regular taxpayer. Excluding them, all are regular taxpayer. Remember. Then question arises, the first, what is the meaning of first return? The first return means when a registered person make any outward supply between the due date on which became liable to registration and the date which registration has been granted, then the same has treated as first return. Suppose Mr. X has been liable to be registered from 1st April 2022, but he has got his registration in 31st July. So from the due date when he liable to be registered, that means 1st April 2022, to the date he actually got the registration, that is in 31st July 2022, whatever supplies he has made, he has to file the return, and that return is called first return, because he has the first time he has filed the return when he got registration. And next comes the meaning of annual return, that is section 44. The annual return already I have told that it can be filed in GSTR 1 or 2 or 3, and required to be filed annually. Who are not the person who are not needed to file annual return, some of the taxpayers are there, they are need not to file annual return. Excluding them, all the taxpayers are bound to file annual return. Who are excluded means who are not eligible to file the annual return. They may be casual taxpayers, which is called CTP. They may be non-resident taxpayers. They may be input service distributor. they be person who authorized to deduct TDS, basically government, and TCS, basically e-commerce operator, then person who are supplying YDS service. These are the person, they are not required to may file the annual return. Excluding them, all other person are required to file the annual return. So now come the meaning of final return. Already I have told you. If when a person when a person is cancel his registration, when the GST commissioner or GST officials cancel the registration of a taxable person, so for this, for such case, the taxable person has to file the return for the last time, because till that date he has not to file the return because his registration has been cancelled. So that this is called final return. So who is liable to furnish the final return? Who is the person who is liable to furnish the final return? That means every registered person who has been required to furnish return, and every person whose registration either is surrendered or cancelled. These are the two persons. That means every registered person has to file a annual final return when, if their business is going to close down, then he has to file the annual return. And every registration whose registration is cancelled or surrendered, in that case they has also to file the final return. Then what are the time limits? Already I have told you. The time limit is called the date of cancellation of registration or date of order of cancellation. Whichever is latter, that is called the date. And from that date, that means it has to be filed within the 3 months. 3 months means either date of registration or date of order of cancellation, whichever is latter ପରେ जोटा होतो जो आम कहे तो तार 3 मास भितर आमको कौन करिया पड़ियो ना फाइनल रिटर्न फाइल करिया पड़ियो. एटा सबले मन रिमेंबर करिवो जे फाइनल रिटर्न 3 मंथ्स भितर ही फाइल करिया पड़े. इधर तुम बिजनेस क्लोज डाउन हो जाऊ जदि रजिस्ट्रेशन पर्सन होइछि किबा इधर तुम रजिस्ट्रेशन सस्पेंडेड होइछि किबा कैंसिल होइछि आर 3 मंथ्स भितर करिवो. बट 3 मंथ्स भितर जो करिवो तार पुनी दुटा डेट अछि. दुटा डेट भितर जोटा अर्ली लैटर माने परे हो. दैट मीन्स डेट ऑफ कैंसिलेशन जेबे हला किबा जेबे ऑर्डर ऑफ कैंसिलेशन. This is the time limit for filing the final returns. Now question, how a registered person file the return in GST? There are several steps you have to follow in order to file the return under GST. I just simply summarizing it. First step is you have to filing your GSTR 1. Then auto-populated GSTR 2 will be generated. Then in GSTR 2 you have to finalize the data whatever you are provided. And then in step 4 you have to provide the reconciliation data of outward and inward supply. Reconciliation means if any addition and deletion of data is there, in step 4 you can do that. And in step 5 you finalize that this is the final data or this is the final amount of data or final transaction I am going to file in GSTR 3, so that after that you cannot change anything. Then then step 6 you will going to payment of taxes and submit the GSTR 3. So this is all about called return under GST. So hope you will understand it and can write exam in very well manner. Thank you.